Ready?
All right.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our town hall regarding COVID-19 and our update for COVID-19 related vaccinations and our efforts to date to mitigate the impacts of the COVID-19 virus. I want to introduce our panelists that are present this evening, and let me start with myself. I am Rhonda Russell, and I serve in Charles City County as the assistant to our esteemed County Administrator, Ms. Michelle Johnson, as her Assistant County Administrator, as well as the Director of our Community Development Department. I am joined this evening with my colleague, Mr. James Johnson, who has, I believe you're in your third year of service to Charles City County. Is that not right, Mr. Johnson? He has joined Charles City County 3 years ago after serving the city of Richmond for 15 years. And ended his career with the city of Richmond as the assistant fire marshal. In Charles City County, Mr. Johnson serves as the director of fire and emergency services and is largely responsible for our success in implementing a paid fire and emergency services department. We're also joined this evening with Dr. James Ciesick.
Correct.
A board certified emergency medicine physician in Richmond, Virginia. He is licensed in licensed in Virginia, Alaska, and Wisconsin. And he is affiliated with Bon Secours, St. Mary's Hospital, and Richmond Community Hospital and Rappahannock General Hospital. So we're going to turn it over to our panelists from this point forward. If you have questions or comments, if you would put those in the chat, and we have a moderator who will be assisting us in fielding those questions to our panelists. And we want to thank you again for joining us this evening. We know your time is valuable, and we intend to make sure that this session is very informative.
All right. So I guess I'll just jump in now, and I get Dr. C, that's what I call him, Dr. C, to elaborate a little more on his credentials.
I'm a retired emergency physician. I practiced for about 40 years, and I have been doing full-time COVID work with Dr. Frank and the group from Chickahominy Health Department for just about a year now. So I have an opportunity to talk to at least 1,000 patients with COVID over the past several months, serving as a case investigator. So I have been working with COVID patients and now with COVID vaccination, not in the hospitals, but through the health department, kind of being a bridge between the health department and the acute care facilities.
Yes, Dr. C has always been at the testing sites when we've had the testing, giving out good, helpful information and encouraging people to get tested if they're not being tested, or he's always giving out good information on the vaccine. So tonight we're going to just hopefully answer some of the questions that everyone may have about the vaccine and the effects of the vaccine and any question that you may have. We may also be joined by Dr. Frank through the Virginia Department of Health, the Chickahominy District, at some point in time during the phone call, and he may be able to answer some more questions that you may have. But first question, Doc, I got a question. What are the most common questions you get related to the vaccine?
There's a tremendous amount of fear about the vaccine. What we have available today is the Moderna vaccine and the Pfizer vaccine. And I would like folks to consider them to be equivalent. There really is no difference between Pfizer and Moderna vaccinations. So if you folks have a chance to get one versus the other, they are equivalent. And it's important to remember that, in my opinion, these started out as safe, and each day they're showing themselves to be even safer. Back in November and December, the studies started to be published from Moderna and Pfizer looking at patients that were vaccinated, not patients, at regular folks that were vaccinated. And both studies looked at about 30,000 people. Both the Moderna and the Pfizer studies gave vaccine to about 30,000 patients each. And then they followed those patients out into the real world. They gave them the vaccine, they followed them out into the real world, and they said, how effective is this vaccine in preventing clinical COVID? So how effective are these vaccines in protecting us against getting the signs and symptoms of COVID? They didn't look at asymptomatic disease. They didn't culture the noses. They just said 60 some thousand between the two studies, go out into the world and see how effective this vaccine is in preventing COVID. And the good news is this vaccine after the second dose is 95% effective against clinical COVID. Remember that with COVID, half of the patients will have disease and not show any symptoms. So they didn't look at people that were asymptomatic. They just looked at giving vaccine and asking how effective is this vaccine in blocking people from getting the signs and symptoms of COVID. And the good news is after the second dose, it's 95%. Moderna and Pfizer are both 95% effective at preventing the clinical signs and symptoms of COVID. So they are equivalent. So it's important for us to remember that both vaccines work through the same principle. They consist of messenger RNA. And remember that there's DNA and RNA. In our genetic makeup, the things that make Jimmy and Jim and all people in the world unique is DNA. This is not a DNA containing vaccine. If you think about back to basic sciences, so Jimmy is sitting next to me. All of us in this room are making proteins. Every minute of the day, we're making proteins. And the way we make proteins is we take DNA and we convert the DNA into messenger RNA. And then from that messenger RNA, we make proteins in our everyday life. So the nature of this vaccine is that we are taking messenger RNA, not DNA, and around the messenger RNA is a lipid membrane. And we are injecting that into the deltoid muscle. It is not DNA. So there's always fear that perhaps we're going to create mutations or affect the genetic material of the human. It's not possible because the messenger RNA cannot go to DNA. This is messenger RNA that is deposited into the arm, and within the arm, the messenger RNA is coding for spike protein. So when we vaccinate people, we are delivering the message to the human body to make spike protein. And why spike protein? Because if you remember, if I go into Walmart and I don't have a mask on and I suck in a big plume of COVID virus, how is that COVID virus going to induce an infection in me? Well, the COVID virus will bind to my upper respiratory, my nose, my throat, my lungs via receptors. We all have receptors in our bodies that want to bind COVID COVID virus. But so here's the virus and here's the receptors for the virus. The only way that the virus can stick to my cells and bind to my cells is with something called spike protein. So spike protein is on the surface of the virus, and it allows the virus to bind to my cells and induce an infection. So the vaccine is messenger RNA coding for a protein, spike protein. So in my arm, I'm making spike protein. And in response to the spike protein, my white cells are saying, my lymphocytes, my immune system is saying, that's not Jim Cesic. That's a foreign protein. That's spike protein being made in my arm. And therefore, you make an immune response. You make antibodies and you make other immunological reactions to this spike protein. So your body is being told, make an antibody against spike protein, so that when you go into Walmart without a mask and that virus wants to bind to your human cells, you have a host response. You have antibodies to that spike protein. And without spike protein, you cannot bind that virus to human cells. So the whole basis of the Moderna and the Pfizer vaccine is messenger RNA telling the human cells to make spike protein. It's not a normal protein that we make, but you're telling the cells for a very short period of time, make spike protein. The spike protein is recognized by the human immune system, and then you have antibodies against it. And those antibodies are protective for what we hope to be a prolonged period of time, but we do not know the duration of immunity. So the Moderna and the Pfizer vaccines are a way for us to make spike protein, make an immunological response to spike protein, and then the virus, even if you're in a cloud of COVID virus, cannot bind to the human cell because you have defenses that are ready to go. So the Moderna and the Pfizer vaccines are 95% effective at blocking clinical COVID infection. They are, with flu vaccine on a good year, we were 50% effective. These are 95% effective. Let's go into the numbers for a bit. So back in November and December, when we were first getting going, we had about 60,000 patients. And the way everybody was concerned about whether this was rolling out too fast and whether we could trust the process. So Pfizer and Moderna took their data, the information from their vaccine trials, and they gave it to an independent regulatory body, not the federal government, not the state government. They gave that information to an independent group of practitioners. And they looked at that, at scientists from around the United States, and they looked at that data and they said, this is legitimate. We're going to allow the FDA to look at this. So there was no federal government, state government, local government. Nobody was intruding on the process. It went straight from Pfizer and Moderna, the companies, to this independent body of scientists who said, this looks legit. And then that information was given to the FDA. And the FDA is a group of scientists that I really believe that we can trust. The other thing that people were concerned about is how quickly this came out. The messenger RNA technology that we have today is a blessing that's based on at least 10 years of smart scientists working on this. In order for this to be effective, it's been at least a decade of people in the lab making this work. So this operation warp speed that you hear about didn't occur in 6 months. This has been a technology that's been growing for at least 10 years. So the technology has been growing, the sophistication has been growing, the data went to an independent group of scientists. They said it was legitimate, and then the FDA looked at it and gave their final approval. So in December, we had 60,000 people that we gave vaccine to, 95% effective. And today I looked up our numbers, and today we're at 22 million in the United States. 22 million Americans across the country, as of today, have received vaccines. So we have safety data now on 22 million Americans. And so that initial process has really come to fruition in that we've not seen any adverse effects that we hadn't anticipated. Now, there are things that occur with this vaccine. About 11 per million, about 1 per 100,000 people will have a significant allergic reaction to the vaccine. 1 per 100,000, or about 11 per million. Not a lot. And within 13 minutes, that allergic reaction will become apparent. So what we're doing at our vaccine sites is there's someone like me or a paramedic or a clinical person watching every single person. And we watch people for 15 minutes if they have no risks, for anaphylaxis. If they have a history of allergies, we watch them for 30 minutes. So they're under our eye. And so allergic reactions have made the media. They are real, 1 per 100,000.
So ask your question,
yeah.
Doc, and I hate to interrupt you.
Yeah.
What about the stories that you hear of people, and I know everybody is not the same, their body is not the same, but people dying from taking the vaccine. Have you heard that?
Yeah, there's a lot of misinformation in the media about this. So I'm 62 years old. If I got vaccinated today and I had a heart attack today, somebody might say that my heart attack was from the COVID vaccine. Well, a lot of 62-year-old people have heart attacks. If I win the lotto after getting my vaccine, then you can't say the vaccine was my lucky charm for winning the lotto. So with all of this, you have to look at the background risk of heart disease, of all the things that occur in 62-year-old guys, and tease out, was this vaccine or was this just life? Because every part of our life, it has a risk associated with it. So to this day, the only thing that we know for certain is allergic reactions do occur. They occur within a relatively short period of time, and they're within our eyesight if they are going to occur.
All right. So other than anaphylactic, which is breathing difficult or allergic, severe allergic reaction, is there any other side effects that has been happening to people besides people being sore in this spot? Or
you can predict that you will have side effects from the vaccine. It is a known side effect that you get it in the deltoid muscle, and a good percentage of people are going to hurt where the vaccine was administered. You could have a headache, you could have chills, you could have a low-grade fever, muscle aches and pains. These are two-shot vaccines. The Pfizer is day 1 and then day 21. The Moderna is day 1 and day 28. So 3 weeks and 4 weeks apart. Both vaccines require 2 doses. The second injection, I can tell you from my own experience, is far worse than the first, but it's very tolerable. I got chills, malaise, fatigue, joint pain, more joint pain than I normally have, and muscle aches and pains. I was still able to walk a couple miles, but I couldn't do my normal 5 miles yesterday. I got my second dose the day before yesterday. Some people actually have fevers. My colleague has a fever today of 101.8 after getting a dose of vaccine yesterday. These are side effects. They should not preclude us from getting vaccine, though, in that they're short-lived. They occur within about 8 hours of the vaccine. They last 24 to 36 hours. They're a nuisance, but the joy and the peace of mind, I was always, people that got COVID and survived, I was always envious of, because those people had immunity. And over the months, I thought, geez, that guy's got immunity. Well, I've had 2 doses of vaccine. And I have to tell you, knowing that I'm 95% protected against a virus that kills over 400,000 Americans gives me great joy, great peace of mind. So yes, you will get side effects. You'll get sight pain. You'll get muscle pain, joint pain, fatigue, malaise, maybe a little fever. The second dose is a little worse than the first, but these are short-lived. They get better with Tylenol, and there have been no hospitalizations that I know of because of these side effects. They are a nuisance, but they're short-lived and treated nicely with Tylenol or other anti-inflammatories like Aleve or ibuprofen.
Okay. And once again, if anybody has any questions, just put it in the chat, and we'll make sure that we can get those questions read, and hopefully we can get them answered. Got another question for you, Doc. And me and you on that friend thing.
Yeah.
I've heard that Johnson & Johnson has just come out with a vaccine. Is that true? And it's a one-shot vaccine.
Correct. Johnson & Johnson have not given their data yet to the FDA or this independent advisory group as of yet. Johnson & Johnson is a little different virus. Johnson & Johnson is a DNA virus. it is, instead of RNA being surrounded by a lipid membrane, this is a DNA vaccine, and the DNA is injected via something called adenovirus, which is the common cold. So it's DNA inside of an adenovirus. It's injected. The adenovirus gets into the cells, because that's the human cells, because that's what adenovirus does. And it brings in the genetic material. Nice thing about Johnson & Johnson is that it's cheaper than Moderna and Pfizer and does not require the cold storage that Pfizer and Moderna. You can put that on the shelf. So in rural America, in the third world, in places where we don't have access to good refrigeration, the Pfizer vaccine requires minus 90 degrees storage. That's hard to do outside of universities. So Johnson & Johnson is probably February going to publish their data. So I can't tell you what their data is going to show. The cousin of that is the Oxford vaccine, and it's a similar vaccine. So Oxford vaccine, which is AstraZeneca. AstraZeneca, Oxford, and the Johnson & Johnson are both DNA viruses. They're not available in the United States. The data for Johnson & Johnson will be coming soon.
Can you still get a COVID vaccination if you've already had COVID?
The answer is yes. COVID is one of the few infections where natural immunity is less than vaccine immunity. The virus fools our immune system, and the immune response is less with a natural infection to COVID than with vaccine. And in fact, the studies would say that vaccine-induced immunity is 5 to 20 times greater than natural immunity. So the CDC guidelines state that you should wait 90 days or so, but that's a soft indication. My own opinion is, I think this vaccine is so effective, so protective relative to patients that have had COVID and have an immune response, that I tell people to take it as soon as you can. You cannot take the vaccine if you have clinical COVID. So if you're sick with COVID, you must not take the vaccine. But you don't have to wait. In my humble opinion, you don't have to wait. It's soft language in the CDC guidelines, and I commonly have been vaccinating people a month after a COVID infection, as long as they're no longer sick, as long as the symptoms have improved. I vaccinate, because I've seen the data on this, that the vaccine immunity is 5 to 20 times greater than natural immunity. You remember when we were kids, there was chickenpox parties, because chickenpox was much better. The immunity to chickenpox, if you got it at your friend's house, was much better than the vaccine. This is not the case. This is a rare infection where natural immunity is less than vaccine immunity.
Okay. I, for one, have not had the test yet, and me and you have gone over and over with this. And after hearing some of the history of it, I was kind of on the fence, but I'm kind of leaning over that fence now, and I'm probably going to get the test.
I think this is our only hope. We were talking earlier. COVID is going to be around for my great-great-great-grandkids. This virus is a respiratory virus. This virus is going nowhere. We will have to live with this as the human race for the duration of mankind. We must learn to live with this. So some sort of vaccine is our only hope. If you look at what the good doctors are doing in the hospitals, there is no good treatment for COVID. We provide supplemental oxygen. Some people get better with Decadron, which is a steroid. There's an antiviral drug called remdesivir that doesn't work very well. I just want everybody listening to this to realize I don't want anybody to get COVID. In my humble opinion, these vaccines are a gift from God. We must run with this, and every day that we each day is new. So we're going to have new data that comes in every single day. I start every morning looking at the CDC websites, looking at the scholarly sites. Is there something new? You have to trust that people have your back. And if there's a new complication that's come up, we promise to convey that to you in real time immediately. We have relationships with the Hanover Fire Department where anything that occurs is a big bulletin board and people are aware of it real time. And we will do that with Charles City County. The only hope that we have as a population of people is some sort of vaccination. And what we have now is Pfizer and Moderna, 95% effective. 22 million Americans have received the vaccine. The only predictable significant side effect is this allergic reaction in 1 per 100,000 people.
Okay. Well, I see Dr. Frank has joined us. Good evening, Dr. Frank.
Before we leave, just 1 second, Tom. Where are the soft spots with Moderna and Pfizer? Where are we uncertain? Because there are some uncertainties. Both studies, Moderna and Pfizer, excluded children. So I can't tell you based on science what we should do with children. Those studies will be forthcoming. They are not out there. The Pfizer vaccine is approved for 16 and older, excuse me. The Moderna is 18 and older. So we do not know how to proceed based on data with children. We do not know what to do with women of childbearing potential or pregnant people. I can tell you that the American College of Gynecology and Obstetrics, the ACIP, the important people that are involved in looking scientifically at vaccine safety in pregnancy, all have come forward and said, please vaccinate pregnant women or women of childbearing potential. So we don't require a preg test before you get the vaccine. Just know that this is an area of some uncertainty. I have 4 children, and 2 of my daughters of childbearing potential have been vaccinated. So know that pregnancy is a soft spot. New data is coming out every day, but remember that if you take a young woman that's not pregnant and compare the population of young women that are pregnant women have a greater risk of admission to the hospital, use of oxygen, admission to the ICU, and mechanical ventilation. So pregnancy is a clear risk factor for complications from COVID. So if you have a risk of exposure, if you're a young woman firefighter, if you're a young woman school teacher, if you cannot work from home and you cannot hide yourself from this virus, if you have a risk for exposure, then in my humble opinion, looking at the data, I think we should proceed with recommending vaccination because we don't want you to have the complications of COVID in pregnancy. And also look at breastfeeding. I have vaccinated a whole bunch of people in the last month who are breastfeeding, and the science so far would indicate that it is safe for us to recommend that young women breastfeed their babies after vaccination. And finally, the third area that we have uncertainty in is immunocompromised patients. So if you have cancer, leukemia, breast cancer, lung cancer, you have any HIV, any disease state where you're immunocompromised because of the disease like cancer or because of the medications we're giving you. Lots of people have rheumatoid arthritis, they have inflammatory bowel disease, they're on medications that compromise the immune system. That's an area of unknown. And what we're doing is, in consultation with the primary care or their doctors that are managing their illness, is we're providing vaccine. You're not at greater risk from the vaccine if you're immunocompromised, but we don't know how you'll respond to the vaccine. So what I recommend is, if you're immunocompromised because of a disease or because of a medication, go ahead and take the 2 doses. And a month or so after the second dose, have your antibody level checked to the virus, just to see how you uniquely responded given your clinical circumstances. So pregnancy, breastfeeding, children, and immunocompromised are soft spots, and we have to fess up that those are soft spots. But we've gone from 60,000 people in December to 22 million in the United States. That's not including Asia and Europe. And so far, we have not seen any significant things that we didn't expect. We expect certain things to occur from the vaccine. It's going to cause pain and fevers and malaise, but we haven't seen anything that we did not anticipate. And that data analysis, every single day, things are being reported to the CDC and to VDH and to state and federal government to look at potential side effects from vaccine. And we are not seeing anything that we did not anticipate.
That's some good stuff, Doc, and that's some great information. I see we have Dr. Frank on from the Chickahominy Health District. He's the head person for the Chickahominy Health District. Dr. Frank, are you there?
Yes, sir, Jimmy, I'm here. I can hear you.
All right, how you doing this evening, sir?
I'm doing well, thanks.
All right, we got a few questions for you, Doc. Can you, and this was, since I'm moderating, I'm gonna do my question first. Can you explain what, where we are on the vaccination as far as 1A, 1B, 1C, or whatever? Can you explain to the viewers where we are in that process as a state or nation?
Yes, I can explain that. And particularly here in Chickahominy Health District, we vaccinated the majority of the people in 1A. That group 1A is healthcare personnel and long-term care facility residents. Those are the residents in the nursing homes and assisted living facilities. And so the majority of 1A folks have been vaccinated. So now we're opening up to 1B. So starting last week, we opened up to 1B. And 1B are the elderly, and they are a group of what they call the frontline essential workers. And that starts with fire, law enforcement, hazmat, and then it drops. The second subgroup is corrections officers, and the third group is K through 12 teachers and staff, as well as child care center workers. And those are the groups that we're focusing on right now. And the reason that we're focusing on those groups is that we all know that we have a limited supply of vaccine. So you got to put those vaccine in arms that need it the most. And the people who need it the most are the elderly, as well as some of these essential frontline workers, but particularly the elderly. And among all of the elderly, the ones who really, really need it the most are the folks who are 75 years and older. And the reason that is that people who are 75 and older, once they get COVID-19, they have roughly 4 times the chance of dying from that disease compared to other folks in the community. And so we've got to focus on our most vulnerable people, the ones who are the highest at risk, and that's the 75 and older. And that's followed by the people who are 65 and older with medical conditions that would also put them at risk. And Dr. Cizik can also, Dr. Cizik's been doing a lot of research and reading on this. And we know that even people who are 16 to 64 with underlying medical conditions also have increased risk of dying and increased risk of hospitalizations. But particularly those 65 and older with underlying medical conditions and people who are 75 and older, even without underlying medical conditions, those are the ones who are going to die from COVID-19. So we've got to put our limited resources to where it's needed the most. And those are the groups that we are going after right now in order to get those vaccines in those arms.
If I could speak to that, I think it's important for folks in Charles City County to know that you must access the Chickahominy Health District website. And on that website, the Chickahominy Health District website, is a way for you to enroll yourself into potentially becoming a recipient of the vaccine. If you don't have a computer, this is the phone number, 804 365 3240. 365 3240. Somebody will help you get onto a list so that you can become a recipient of the vaccine. You have to go to the Chickahominy District website, enroll yourself, or make a phone call. You can't go to the Virginia Department of Health website. It has to be unique to Chickahominy so that you can enroll yourself. And there may be a wait for that vaccine. Realize that Central Virginia has tweaked this a little bit, and that the governor and the Virginia Department of Health websites state that if you're 16 to 64 and you have a comorbid condition, like you've got a bone marrow transplant and you're 16 to 64, you can get vaccine. Central Virginia has, that's Chesterfield, Henrico, Richmond, and Chickahominy have changed it a little bit to get vaccine to the most important folks, the most at risk from dying from COVID. So know that there's some unique things per district, and we have to encourage our people to go to the Chickahominy website to get the most current, up-to-date information, or make the phone call if you don't have a computer.
Now, I think everybody knows that we will be giving the vaccine next Thursday, February 4th, in Charles City. And the requirements for that were that you had to be 75 or older. And we did give the number to call my office to my assistant, Rachel Greenhouse, because we have a lot of seniors in Charles City that don't have internet, that don't get on Zoom or Facebook. So we gave them a phone number to call, but you have to be registered. Let me repeat that. In order to get your vaccine next week, you have to be registered. And we're looking for those that are 75 and years old or older. And there's only a limited amount of vaccine that was provided to Charles City at this time. So we had to do a first come, first served basis. We are working on trying to get some more vaccines, so more information will be coming out for that, if that's going to be a reality that happens. And we will let you know in plenty of time to be able to sign up.
We only have 200 doses for the 4th of February. So please, everyone, get online, make a phone call, get on these lists. It's the only way that we can get this precious limited vaccine into your arms. You must get on the list through the health department at Chickahominy, please.
Hey, Dr. Frank, question from one of our citizens. Are there any other places where Charles City residents can go to get vaccinated if they can't get it here in Charles City?
Yes, if they can get into any other local health department's system and get registered, there's potential for them to get vaccinated in other jurisdictions. One example of that is we've had some Charles City residents come to the New Kent County event that we had last Saturday. We were able to vaccinate a couple of hundred, and we've had events up at Randolph-Macon College. There are regional events at the Richmond International Raceway. We are currently scheduling Charles City County residents as we speak. We are hoping to get at least 100 Charles City County residents into that event this weekend. That's an invitation only, but it's open to the entire region, which means Chickahominy Health District, Richmond City Health District, Henrico Health District, and Chesterfield Health District. So we've been given some slots, and we are calling some Charles City County residents, and we also have the list for those who have already entered and got onto our list through the website and through the email. We've got their emails, and they should be receiving emails here. If they haven't already received them, they should be receiving those within the next few hours, really. That just went live about 4 hours ago. and we do have some Charles City County residents on that list. So the other good news for next week is that we hope to double the size of that clinic. We are actively searching for extra doses, and I think I've been able to secure 200 more doses. And so no promises yet, but my goal is to get 400 doses next week. So we'll double the size of that clinic. And I looked at the website, the statistics today, and I was really, really disappointed. I was almost appalled. In Charles City County, I only saw 230 people who had received their dose so far. That's only 3.3% of the population. And my goal is to triple that number by the end of next week. I want to triple that number so that number is at least 700.
That'll be
after
a
that,
great...
we're going to keep going, and we're going to keep allocating doses of that COVID vaccine, particularly the Moderna. Right now, we just have the Moderna. But we're going to keep allocating doses and having regular clinics in Charles City County.
Okay, that'll be great, and it'd be greatly appreciated. Another question for you, Doctor. How do you all determine how many vaccines are available for each community?
Well,
You there, Doc?
Yep. So overall, what we were requesting for the health district was about 6,000 doses, and we're getting less than 1/3 of those. We had felt that 6,000 doses a week would be a good number that we could actually start vaccinating the people who needed to be vaccinated in priority groups 1A and 1B. But now we're receiving less than 1/3 of that, and so that's why we had to be so selective about what priority groups that we were actually going to start vaccinating. And I'll tell you that given the fact that that we're aiming for the 75 and older population first, and then soon to follow that will be the 65 and older. Charles City County is an older population of people. And so I would hope that Charles City County would be getting proportionally more because of their older population. And that's our goal, is to make sure that that population who are 65 and older are going to get that vaccine. And so we're going to actually target Charles City County as a priority based upon the fact that they have an older population in your county.
Well, I'm sure everyone, including myself, is happy to hear that. I feel sometimes we're the forgotten land down here, and I'm glad somebody is looking out for us. Once again, we're live on Facebook. If anybody has any questions that they would like to ask, I don't see any questions.
If folks could please remember that the risk of death from COVID, if you're in your 80s, is approximately 1/3. It's about 27% if you're in your 70s. So folks out there that are in their 70s and 80s realize that the likelihood of you dying from COVID is incredibly high. So even more information for looking hard at the safety and efficacy of this vaccine, as Tom said, in the older population that we're serving. The risk of death is just too high. And the safety and efficacy of this vaccine with 22 million people is really panning out, thankfully.
So, and Jimmy, I wanted to repeat what Dr. Cizik put out, that phone number that people can call. So for people who don't have good internet access, please call that number. And that number again is 804-365-3240, 804-365-3240. And in addition to that, a really good way to get instant access to the online registration is to email. If you do have internet access and you've got email, email the following: CHD, that's C as in Charlie, H as in hotel, D as in Delta, vaccine at VDH, V as in Victor, D as in Delta, H as in Hotel, .Virginia, spelled out completely, .gov, G-O-V. So again, that's CHD vaccine at VDH.Virginia, spelled out, .gov. And I'll put that in the chat so that y'all can see that. Those two, if you do one of those two means, you'll be able to register yourself, get your name on that list so that we know who you are and we can reach out to you. Thanks.
I can tell you that the people that are going through that list are the most sincere, hardworking, ethical people I have ever met. It's an honor to be a part of this group. And if you're on the list, I promise you, your name will come up and you'll get your vaccine, because the people working behind the scenes have great integrity.
All right, so I can see the questions now. I must was doing something wrong. This question is from Steve Furman. Reportedly, the Commonwealth currently will distribute 100,000 doses. That's 50,000 for each regimen per week by population. Charles City County's population is about 81,000 of the state. At the reported rate, Charles City will receive about 40 vaccines per week and require 136 weeks to vaccinate. Charles City adults older than 18 and between 78% of the 7,000 total population. Am I missing something?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. There's a couple of things that are not right about those figures. So first of all, the 100,000 doses per week is correct. That's what Virginia is getting, but it's not to be divided into 2 doses. So those 100,000 doses will be repeated in the next 3 to 4 weeks for the second dose. So those second doses will be repeated in another 100,000 doses 3 to 4 weeks later, depending on whether it's Pfizer vaccine, in which case it's 3 weeks, or Moderna vaccine, in which case it's 4 weeks, so that everybody who gets a first dose will get a second dose. So now Steve is right in dividing up the population and comparing it to the rest of the Virginia population. That would mean that you would get about 80, not 40, but you would double that, and it would take a long time to get everybody vaccinated. But here's what we're going to do in Charles City County next week is we're aiming for 400 doses. So instead of 40 doses, we want to give 400 doses starting next week. And then we want to continue at least 100 to 200 doses per week going forward. And as soon as the vaccine pipeline opens up, which we think will be in March, we'll be able to offer more and more vaccines each week, to the point where the goal, given the vaccine supplies that we see coming from Pfizer and Moderna and AstraZeneca and Johnson & Johnson coming into the future, we think that we'll be able to offer everybody in the population a vaccine by the end of the summer. So that would be about 8.4 million people in Virginia. And of the 7,000 people in Charles City County, I imagine some of those are young kids, but I imagine about 70. If we can get 70% of people, even 75% of people wanting to get that vaccine, we can vaccinate all of those 75% of the population who want it.
Okay. Another question, and this seems like a good question. From Latanya Williams. Why are citizens that are 65 or older with pre-existing conditions not included in the vaccination for next Thursday when they are part of the 1B group?
Yep. If there are extra slots, we will include those folks. It's all going to depend on how many doses and how many slots we've got available. They are definitely in that 1B category, and we want to get them vaccinated. So along with 75 and older, as soon as we've got open slots, we're going to invite the 65 and older with chronic conditions, no doubt about it.
But please, we have to have 200 people that are over 75 on February the 4th. Please show up. If you have questions, I'll be there. Let's get our older population vaccinated as soon as possible.
And if you call my office, my assistant, even if the list has filled out, she will put you on the waiting list. So when spots do open or when they decide to start vaccinating the next group, she will call you back and give you a call and let you know it's happening. And her name is Rachel Greenhow, and her number is 804-652-4511. All right, let's ask another question. This is from Wayne Saunders. I heard not to take ibuprofen or Tylenol before or after the shot. Can you speak on this?
I'll take that one. I think that you can predict that your arm is going to hurt after the first or the second vaccine. It's mild to moderate pain, usually more than that. And I would encourage you to start things off with a local ice pack and Tylenol. Tylenol is not an anti-inflammatory. If the pain persists and ice and Tylenol is not working, then it's okay to take some Motrin or Aleve or an anti-inflammatory medication. It's probably more theoretical, but smart people that I talk to state that maybe we want that inflammation to be occurring, and maybe that pain is a sign that things are working. So let's not jump to an anti-inflammatory until we've done local ice application and Tylenol. If you have pain after that, a dose or two of an anti-inflammatory certainly will not hurt anything.
Okay. Mr. Wayne Hilton, I understand the sheriff's office is receiving vaccines. Can we also make sure all the courthouse staff receive shots too? Clerks, prosecutors, appointed attorneys, and judges. I got an email this morning that said the judges were ordered to get vaccines. Is that true, Dr. Frank? And if so, when would they be able to do this?
Yep. So yes, the judges and constitutional officers are on the 1B list. They're not in the top 3 categories. However, they're a little bit lower down that list. So as soon as we have enough doses to vaccinate those top 3 categories, and roughly the majority of people 75 and older, we're going to open it up to the rest of those categories in 1B. So that shouldn't be too long from now. That'll open up to the subgroups 4 through 13. I think it's 13. I'll have to go back and look. They keep adding categories. So that'll be all of the other frontline essential workers and people 65 and older, and as well as people age 8 for us, Moderna 18 to 64 with underlying medical conditions. When just keep in mind though, when you do that, when you open up all those groups, that's over half of our population. It's half our population in the U.S. and Virginia and here in Charles City County. You're talking about over half the population of people when you open up to those groups. So, and when you keep in mind the number of doses we're getting currently, that's going to be a long time. So that's why we're going down this list very methodically and vaccinating the people who are most at risk first, followed by those second most at risk, and then third most at risk. We got to be very methodical about how we do this if we want to save the most number of lives out there.
Okay. Let's see. Let's answer some more questions.
Does the 2-part vaccine last the rest of your life?
The question is whether 2 doses of Moderna or Pfizer will last the rest of your life. And the simple answer is we just don't know. We don't know the duration of immunity, but those studies are forthcoming. And it may well be that we're going to require a booster shot at some point in the future. But the important take home is 1 week after your second dose of Moderna or Pfizer, you're 95% protected. That duration is unclear. And please stay tuned for more.
All right. Miss Martia Jones. Her question was, what's the plan for those who did the registration for the 2-4 event through the health department as requested and have not been called for an appointment as of yet? And if you are now only accepting some of the 1B group, what is your criteria for those you are selecting? Once again, criteria was you had to be 75 years or older. If you call that number that I gave you for Miss Greenhouse, 652-4511, she will put you on a waiting list. And as vaccines become available, we will be going straight down the waiting list. I know also, like Dr. Frank said, he's trying to increase the amount for next week. We'll know something probably by Monday. Would you say, Dr. Frank? Hopefully Monday or Tuesday.
Yes, sir. By Monday, we should have an answer as to how many doses. I'm pushing for at least 400. That'll double the size of that clinic.
So we will put out information on Monday or whenever we get the go ahead from Dr. Frank and continue with those that are 75 and older. And if we don't get any more 75 and older residents, then we'll start going down the list, the waiting list, the people that are on the waiting list, and whatever the criteria is for the next group. We want to be respectful and honor the time frame. We had an hour for tonight of Dr. C and Dr. Frank, and we appreciate them coming on tonight and answering some questions. The rest of the questions that we have that you submitted, we will answer or have them answer and put them out on the website so you can get those answers that you want. And like you say, if you still want to get your vaccination, just make sure that you continue to call Rachel Greenhouse. However, I know she's on vacation tomorrow, so we will probably start back up Monday with the calling, hopefully, and start the list and start rolling on the list again.
Yep.
We appreciate everybody for calling in and asking questions. And we'll have the answers to your questions posted by Monday.
If we could close by saying this is not the time to surrender to this virus. I think we face potentially some dark days before we get everybody vaccinated. So please don't let your guard down. Do not surrender. Don't become fatigued. Don't become angry. Stay engaged. And please continue social distancing. Please continue wearing your masks. Don't swap air with people that you aren't in like Jimmy and I are doing right now. But please keep your distancing. Use your mask. Don't succumb to this. Better days are coming. The light at the end of the tunnel is vaccine and the various vendors of this vaccine. So please continue to be vigilant and don't surrender to this virus because we may face some difficult times in the next month.
Anything you want to say before we close, Dr. Frank?
No, I think Dr. Cizik here said it all right there. Yeah, please don't let your guard down, and please keep your hope.
There is hope in vaccine. There's light at the end of the tunnel, folks. If you can qualify for the 4th of February, please come visit us. I'd love to meet you in person. Please come get this vaccine because it's our only hope. Again, 22 million Americans, safe and effective. That's good data. And each day we'll look carefully and make sure the data is not changing.
All right. Like I said, once again, thank you, Dr. Frank, for participating tonight. Thank you, Dr. C, my friend.
Yeah.
It's always a pleasure.
Right,
always. And I'm sure he'll probably be there next Thursday.
Absolutely.
Talking to everybody and meeting everybody. Once again, we thank you as a county. We thank you. I thank you personally. Thank you. Continue to follow the CDC guidelines, wearing your mask, washing your hands, and social distancing. That's it for us for tonight. Thank you and be safe.
Thank you, Jimmy. Good night.
Thank you.